Okay, welcome everybody. It's just a couple minutes after 1, so we're going to get started just with a few announcements. Welcome to First at Blue Ridge. Thanks for coming out. Bathrooms are through here. Just follow the signs to the left. Plenty of food here. I think John said there's some chicken wraps and some other things. I see some cookies. There's Starbucks coffee in the back. We're shooting for about 3 hours today and a 15-minute break in the middle, so we'll be wrapping up about 4:15. Anything else I'm missing from the intro, John? Okay, cool. Well, welcome. This is Introduction to Acceptance and Commitment Therapy. My name is Papillon DeBoer. A lot of folks just call me Poppy for short. I'll start just by saying a little bit about me, and then we'll get rolling. I know normally at workshops, maybe we do a round of introductions. People say why they're here. But we're trying to cram a whole counseling theory into 3 hours, so we're just going to go for it, okay? So I'm a licensed professional counselor, just dropped the associate. Pretty stoked about that. Graduate of Lenore-Rhine, Asheville, here in the mountains, inaugural class. And I actually had a graduate course on acceptance and commitment therapy. That's how I found it. There's a local therapist named Trent Codd who works at the CBT Center of WNC, very knowledgeable, very skilled, and he came in talking about ACT, and we were so interested, we asked him to teach us a course on it. So we got a summer course on ACT and 3 of the other third wave CBTs that I'll mention a little bit later. I've also been through a 4-day boot camp, is what they call it, with the founders of ACT, Stephen Hayes, Kelly Wilson, Kelly Strosall, a few other folks. That was intense. I don't know if y'all have ever sat for 10 hours and tried to pay attention and practice a counseling theory. Whew, I will not do that again. But I'm grateful for the experience. It gave me a real grounded understanding and application of this theory. That was also in the middle of grad school, and I've been using it ever since. I practice the principles every day in my counseling work. Also use them in my own life. It's one of the interesting things about ACT is it's not limited to the room, okay? I am a contract therapist with Our Voice. We serve survivors of sexual trauma and their loved ones. We offer free counseling, court advocacy. We do prevention and education in the schools, teaching about consent and things like this. Great organization if you're not aware of them, ourvoicenc.org. I'm also in private practice with my own business, the Agency of Change, and just basically frame it that I work with people who feel stuck. Generally, we could probably boil down a lot of our client issues to people feeling stuck, okay? That is also an ACT perspective that we'll get into in just a minute here. If you have not signed at front, make sure you sign your name there so you get your certificate. There's also some handouts, and then I have some ACT books up here as well, if you want to browse them before, during, or after. All right, objectives for this training. We're going to take a whole counseling theory, and we're going to break it down in just 3 hours, hopefully. We'll see how this goes. This is my first time teaching this workshop also, so bear with me. We'll do our best. I think we can do it. So we're going to outline the basic philosophy that underscores ACT, okay? And basically, we're going to be talking about driving a car. We're not going to be talking about what's under the hood and how the engine works, okay? Driving a car is pretty simple when it boils down to it. You got steering wheel, accelerator, brake, some turn signals, a few different moves. Yes, it takes some practice. We'll do a little practice today. And we're not going to talk about a lot of the really complex science that underlies the theory today, okay? There's room for more research if you really like the theory. We're going to identify 6 core processes that acceptance and commitment therapy uses, all right? As a therapist, as an ACT therapist, you have 6 basic moves. That's it. Okay, just like when you first get in and they teach you to paraphrase, they teach you to reflect feeling, they teach you to reflect meaning, etc., kind of like that. For each of those 6 processes, we're going to practice, or I'm going to share several techniques so that you're going to walk out with a tool belt full of stuff to try in session, okay? And ideally, you're going to walk out of here and you're going to be able to drive the car. It might just be in the parking lot at 5 miles an hour, okay? But you're going to be able to practice this in session. You could do it this afternoon. You could do it Monday. All right? So what is acceptance and commitment therapy? I'm going to try not to be that guy who reads every word on the PowerPoint to you, because I know you can read. Occasionally, I'll stress some things. Introduced in '99. All right? It's considered part of the third wave of CBT, which includes DBT, which we've all probably heard of, used a lot very effectively for borderline personality disorder. Compassion-focused therapy, which I also draw from. We're not going to talk about it too much today, but I do have a book about how ACT intersects with compassion-focused therapy. And then functional analytic psychotherapy. All behavioral treatments, all very interesting, all working with a lot of therapeutic relationship, with mindfulness, and with that person-centered approach. So I really like it because it's very personal, very connected, and also evidence-based. At its core, it's a behavioral treatment. This is behavioral science. They do a lot of experiments to show and justify how and why ACT is effective. So it considers thoughts, feelings, and behaviors all as behaviors, something that the client is able to observe and then potentially to work with or influence. Primary in ACT is helping clients to develop their values, to live a rich and meaningful life. That's the purpose of ACT. We're all struggling with stuff. How can we, in the face of this struggle, live a meaningful life? Any questions about this so far? All right. ACT is not a manualized treatment. DBT is. There are very specific protocols. There are years-long trainings you're supposed to do to get certified. Anyone can call themselves an ACT therapist. You don't have to get certified. You don't even have to go to a training. Anybody can call themselves an ACT therapist. Has its pros and cons, of course. But it does use some really very simple processes that we're going to explore and we're going to practice today. And once you get the process, you can make up your own intervention. You can make up your own technique, which is super cool. I'm not aware of any other counseling theory that I've studied that encourages you to get creative and make up your own intervention. So there's a lot of room to bring yourself to ACT. And so I want to invite you to take out a scratch sheet of paper or on one of those handouts. Just take a minute and write down, who are you as a clinician, a caseworker, or a therapist? What are some of your strengths? And does anybody want to take a risk and brag a little bit about themselves? Just one or two things that you think are strengths of yours as a clinician or caseworker or therapist. Megs, what you got?
Empathetic, compassionate, intuitive, non-judgmental.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing. Thanks for your boldness. Anybody else?
Said experienced and motivated.
Great. Thank you. And so this is great. No, please. Yes. Tell us.
Creative and humorous.
Creative and humorous. Excellent. Thank you. So this is going to play into our workshop today and one of the things that we're moving forward. Okay, so you're going to keep writing stuff down. I'm going to invite you to ponder some things as we move through. So this isn't just me talking at you for 3 hours. Okay. There is a catch. Okay. The less you practice these principles in your own life, the less effective you're going to be as an ACT therapist. Okay. My opinion, All right? If we don't know it, how are we going to do it? So my question to you today is, are you willing to engage in a process of self-exploration during this workshop while we explore the foundations of ACT? You willing to look inside a little bit? Great. Thank you. So let's start by writing down either a personal issue that you're struggling with, or if that feels too intimate for today, a client's issue that you've been struggling with and you're not sure how to work with. And we're going to refer back to this throughout the workshop. Okay, and I see some folks are still writing. Feel free to add as you will. We're going to move into lesson 1. The goal of ACT is not symptom reduction. Isn't that what we're trying to do as therapists? Aren't we trying to help people reduce these uncomfortable experiences that they have in life? Not according to ACT. Okay? The goal of ACT is living a more valued and flexible life in the face of symptoms. Okay, it does work to change behaviors, increase valued behaviors. Sometimes symptom reduction occurs as a side benefit, but this is not the goal. Weird, right? And we'll get into why. But I want to feel better. People come to therapy. What do you want to get out of therapy? I just want to be happy. What does that mean? Well, that means I'll feel less anxious, or I don't have any anxiety. I don't have any depression. Right? It's the absence or lack of things. What is that? But when we start to identify values, then we have something to aim for, right? We have a workable direction to aim in. So how do we frame this when clients come in, they say, I want to feel better, and we're sitting thinking to ourselves, well, if I'm practicing ACT, I'm not focused on symptom reduction. One of the things I like to tell clients, joke with them even, is, oh, you know what? I loaned out my magic wand. Sorry. I mean, I could have just waved it and we could just make your depression disappear, but, dang. Okay. I don't make promises when I work with clients. I talk about how I think we can work effectively together. Has anyone ever completely cured a client of any unhappiness, any struggle? Raise your hand. Total cure, total success. Right? And yet somehow, unconsciously, we have this as a goal. Like maybe there's this top of a mountain we're going to reach, and the client's going to have a happy life and no troubles. I'm exaggerating a little bit today for effect, but it looks like you all are getting it. Okay? So classic ACT question. Are you willing to have discomfort, to have your social anxiety, to have your self-critical thoughts? Are you willing to have these things and continue to move your life forward in a valued direction? Okay? So this is addressing what they call in ACT willingness, basic willingness. Classic ACT principle, and I love this. I just said this to a client the other day. Control is the problem, not the solution. Clients typically come in and they're trying to control what's happening. They're trying to control their anxiety. They're trying to control someone else in their lives. They're trying to force things to happen. And that, according to ACT, is what the problem is. And so lesson 2, this is creative hopelessness, okay? Some clinicians say hopefulness instead, because hopelessness is a little bleak. Either way, it's not a term that we specifically use with clients. But this is one of the first steps in doing ACT, is we ask folks, what have you tried to get rid of your problem? How's that working out for you? Probably not very well, otherwise they wouldn't be in therapy. What has it cost you to try and get rid of this problem? And usually they've spent so much energy trying to control their internal or external experiences, they can't see any other way to operate. We're a control culture, right? This is how our minds work. We can build a chair, we can cut someone's hair, we can make a painting, we can take apart something mechanical. And so we do this funny thing where then we translate that into our internal experience and assume that we can do the same with our thoughts, we can do the same with our emotions, that we can control it in the same way. And bottom line, we can't. And so there are a number of ways that we're going to get clients to see this. All right? ACT isn't about trying to talk clients into this philosophy. It's about introducing some basic concepts and bringing out some basic exercises for them to try to start to get it, to start to let go of the control. Okay, any questions so far about what ACT is, about creative hopelessness? Okay. If I can't feel happy, what should I do? What do I do? Clients come because they're out of ideas. They don't know what to do. And paradoxically, the answer we're going to give them in some subtle ways is stop doing. First, we're going to stop doing, okay? So we're going to do a few exercises, and I'm going to lay out a few metaphors, okay? So I want to invite each one of you to think of a recent memory, maybe what you had for breakfast, maybe something irritating on the road. Just call that memory up. Okay? Now, erase that memory from your mind. Erase it, delete it, so you never, ever can think about it again. Okay? Don't think about that thing that happened. Don't think about what you had for breakfast. Who successfully erased the memory from their mind and they're never, ever going to think of it again? I'm disappointed in you guys. Come on. Just teasing. Okay? So that's a really quick and easy way to start to demonstrate the control agenda to clients and show them that it's near impossible. Okay? That's the delete a memory exercise. Polygraph metaphor. As we say to the client, okay, I'm a mad scientist, and I'm going to hook you up to my machine that is a combination of a lie detector and electroshock. And at any sign of anxiety, just the faintest whisper of nervousness, you're going to get a 1,000-volt shock. Okay, I'm going to hook you up right now. Now, don't feel any anxiety. You look like you're feeling a little nervous, right? Not possible. Who's going to be able to not feel anxious when they're hooked up to a machine that's given them a 1,000-volt shock? And who's going to be able to control their feelings to that subtle degree? Not possible. So again, this outlines the control agenda and shows how it's futile. Okay? So when clients say, what do I do? What do I do? Here are a couple metaphors that are useful for answering that question. I don't know if y'all remember the TV show Tarzan or any of these old movies in the jungle. Quicksand is a funny mix of sand and water, where if you stumble into it, the more you struggle, the more it's gonna just pull you down and you're gonna sink and you're gonna die. So the secret to surviving quicksand is to stop struggling and allow yourself to float to the top and then slowly, easily paddle yourself to the edge. Okay? So what's the core lesson there? Stop struggling. Stop struggling. And we're going to get more specifically into how to help folks do this. All right? Tug of war with a monster. Okay? Tell the client, okay, you ever play tug of war? All right. You've got one end of the rope. The monster has the other end of the rope. The harder you pull, the harder that monster pulls. Back and forth. You're running out of energy. The tug of war's going on forever. How do you win? How do you win tug of war with a monster? Drop the rope. Drop the rope. Okay? Another way to illustrate letting go of the control agenda.
It's not winning. It's not engaging.
Exactly.
Which is different in a lot of people's eyes.
Yeah, you can't win a tug of war with a monster. But you can, in a sense, win by not engaging. I don't want to play. Yeah. Creative hopelessness and trauma is an uneasy relationship for me a little bit. I work with a lot of sexual trauma survivors. So it's not appropriate for every client. For trauma survivors, hopelessness can be overwhelming, flooding, triggering. And I don't want someone to feel completely devastated and emotionally overwhelmed in the room, right? I don't want to exacerbate their feelings of powerlessness. Okay, so creative hopelessness, not useful for every client, but it's useful for us to be thinking about as far as that control agenda. Okay? And again, we're not trying to talk our clients into anything. We don't want to get into a struggle with them to release their struggle. Just release your struggle. Just let go of it. Not so effective. I don't know if anybody else has tried it. Doesn't work. Okay, so we're not trying to talk them into doing things differently. We're offering our perspective, offering some metaphors, some exercises for them to experience what it's like to hold things in a completely different way. Okay, any questions so far? All right. Lesson 3. This is big, okay? ACT says that almost all psychological suffering results from either avoiding uncomfortable thoughts, feelings, and experiences, or being so fused with them, we believe them to be true and unchangeable, and don't see that we have a choice. This is everything in ACT. I'm either avoiding or struggling against having an experience, internal or external, or I'm so fused with it, it's all I can see, and I can't see anything else. Experiential avoidance is the first half of the equation. Okay? It's like I was saying, believing that we could just delete these internal experiences. We can just get rid of them somehow. Okay? Doesn't work. And actually increases potentially that experience. Every week, I would say, or every time I'm working with a new client and they have anxiety, that anxiety, they are fighting it, struggling with it. And the first time they start to let go of it, let go of that struggle, they start to have a completely different experience. Okay? Again, the goal is not symptom reduction. I'm not telling him, if you just stop struggling, you'll have less anxiety. Sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But often, folks are fighting against stuff. They're fighting against some part of themselves, and when they're able to start to release that struggle, their whole world starts to change. All right. I'm going to do a little demonstration of how this works. Danny, can I have your help? You're not going to throw that on me, are you? No. You can put it down. Thanks. So, thank you. Danny works also at Our Voice. Is an excellent caseworker, social work student. So I'm the uncomfortable experience, okay? And Danny is trying to avoid me, okay? Thanks, Danny. Thank you. That's amazing. Thank you. Did Danny successfully avoid me? No. Mm-mm. He kind of did. I mean, he ran away, but I could have kept following him. And what was happening while he was trying to avoid me? Could he read a book while he was trying to avoid me? Could he watch a movie? Could he hug his partner? Mm-mm. Nope. So clients are so invested in the control agenda, it takes a lot of their energy. Okay. Clients sometimes will even tell you straight up that they're trying to control their own experiences. Often in the room, I'll hear them say, this thing was happening. I was with my partner. I wanted to make out with them, and then my body said no. And I don't want to let that happen. I don't want my body to tell me that. And so then I got really anxious, and then I tried to do it anyway, and then it got worse. Okay, so they'll often tell you just straight up, I don't want that, or I didn't want that to happen. That's the language of experiential avoidance. Okay. Any questions about experiential avoidance? Okay. Cognitive fusion. This is the other half of the avoidance fusion dynamic. Cognitive fusion is inflexible. It's rigid. It's fixation. People are stuck. They're stuck in a thought. They're stuck in a feeling. They're stuck in a behavior. And they don't know how to get out. The thought may even be true factually, right? A lot of clients, when we're working on safety, sexual trauma clients, when we're working on them cultivating feelings of safety, they'll say, but I'm not safe. Anything bad could happen to me at any time. Well, that's true. How's that working out for you? How's that belief serving you? It might be true, but is it workable? ACT focuses a lot on workability. Okay? So we're going to do a cognitive fusion exercise. This is the lemon exercise. I'm not going to chase anybody around the room with lemons, okay? But I want to invite you to hold the lemon wedge between thumb and finger. Okay? Just squeeze it a little bit. Feel is it, firm or a little squishy. Maybe you can see it doing that fine mist spray of lemon juice every time you squeeze it. And just check out the color, look at the flesh of the lemon, that like wrinkliness that it has, and then that white inner rind and the yellow outer rind with those little pock marks in it. And then just take a whiff. Smell that tangy lemon smell. So sour. And then if you're willing, just take a bite of that lemon. Feel the lemon juice squirt across your tongue, that like sour, tangy, almost bitter taste. Whose salivary glands are going? Almost everybody. Okay, that's cognitive fusion. Were you holding a lemon wedge in your hand? No, but your mind acted as if it was real. This is how powerful our minds are. Okay? Your mind just acted as if an imaginary lemon wedge was in your mouth and your salivary glands started going in response. Okay? That's cognitive fusion. It's so real, our minds treat it just like that. Okay, any questions about cognitive fusion? Okay. So we're going to practice a little bit. Okay? Where do you see avoidance? Where do you see fusion? Example 1, I'm not going to read the whole thing to you unless people in the back can't see it. Anybody not see it? Okay. So Bert. Okay, who's willing to take a risk and say where they see either some avoidance or some fusion in Bert's story?
Drinking is avoidance.
Drinking is avoidance.
And the fusion is the memory of being raped and thinking of that controls.
Yep. I can't ever escape from that. Anybody see anything else? Any other avoidance or fusion?
Not getting out of bed.
Not getting out of bed. Anybody else?
I'm seeing the fusion again with I lost my career because of it. I lost my wife and children because of it. So it's going back to fusing that experience in the past with what's occurring.
Exactly. He's living in the past. It's not what's happening now, but he's fused with that. One other place of fusion.
I guess he's 56.
Sorry?
Then he's 56. He's starting to push towards 60. And this is his first experience.
So he was avoiding talking about it for that long. Mm-hmm.
At least in that.
Yep. I didn't even come up with that. Thank you. Good one. Another piece of fusion, shame and self-criticism. He's fused with that self-critical voice in his mind. Okay, great. You guys are doing great. Example 2, Nadine. Do I need to read this? Can everybody see? Okay. Who sees avoidance and or fusion?
She's avoiding the unwanted thoughts by these compulsions.
Avoiding the unwanted thoughts, using the compulsions. What else?
The fusion would be the magical thinking that she's going to be praying Bible verses all the time. It's going to affect change.
Yep, the fusion is the stuff she's telling herself over and over again in her mind. Mm-hmm. Yep, and I think somebody already said it, but avoiding those unwanted thoughts of her baby dying. That's what she's trying to avoid. She doesn't want to have that. Who would? Mm-hmm. New mothers have lots of experiences like this. Like horrible thoughts about their babies dying or things that could happen. And sometimes they're so horrified by it, they think that they're unique and everybody else doesn't have those thoughts. It can really, really do a number on them. So be aware of that if any of y'all work with new mothers. That's a really, really common process that we can help them with. Okay, so it sounds like y'all are getting avoidance and fusion. Now we're going to do a little DSM practice. Okay, I've cherry-picked a few symptoms that are more obvious than others from borderline, from generalized anxiety disorder, and from PTSD. Okay, so borderline personality disorder, frantic efforts to avoid abandonment. What's that? Avoidance. Idealization or devaluation of other people. Fusion. Self-harm.
I feel like that is both.
Yep, I'm hearing both, avoidance or fusion. So with self-harm, folks generally are trying to avoid very extreme emotional experiences by cutting or self-harming in some way. So we could say they're fused with the self-harm. I think the larger, more obvious process is they're trying to avoid an experience by cutting or et cetera. Yeah.
I think with avoiding abandonment, I think there's a fusion in there too, which is the assumption that they will be abandoned. And so the focus is on the abandonment and then how to avoid it. If there wasn't that assumption that people were going to leave and weren't going to want to be around them anymore, I don't think there would be the need for this work.
Yeah, I would agree with you. They're fused with that idea or that belief. I'll never be loved. I'll always be alone, for sure. And so what we're seeing here too is ACT is not black or white. It's not this or that. There's a lot of overlay, okay? Severe dissociative symptoms, avoidance or fusion? Avoidance, yep. All right, GAD, excessive anxiety and worry. Fusion. Difficulty, or it's difficult to control the worry. Yep. And there's that avoidance, like I'm trying to stuff it away. I love how much of this language is actually in the DSM. Difficult to control the worry. Muscle tension. Fusion, I'm stuck. Fusion is rigidity, stuckness, inflexibility. Maybe it even translates to the physical body. Impairment in social areas of functioning. This one's a little vague, but generally they won't go out to social events or go out in public, which is avoidance. Great. Y'all are great. PTSD, recurrent intrusive memories, flashbacks. Fusion. Avoidance of associated stimuli. Persistent and exaggerated negative beliefs about oneself. Fusion. Persistent negative emotional state. Fusion with those challenging emotions. Okay, so you're seeing it, right? Experiential avoidance, cognitive fusion. Two main things that clients are going to present with. Something else to be aware of is our tendency as clinicians to engage in avoidance behaviors or fusing behaviors, okay? I'm going to read this out loud because it's going to be fun. Client, I can't believe she treats me like that. So mean, so critical. I feel like I can't get away from it, like I'm in prison. It's awful. It's every day of my life. Have you ever discovered with some clients that if you reflect what they're feeling or reflect what they say, they just keep going? So we might do that. We might say, oh, that sounds so hard. You feel really attacked. And the client goes, and another thing, and another thing, and another thing. What behavior are we reinforcing? Yeah. Okay. Part 2. Client says, I've never told anyone this before, and I don't want to discuss it. but my mom used to watch me take a bath and it always felt creepy. Therapist says, we've talked a lot about your mom. Let's work on your current relationships and how you feel dissatisfied. What's the therapist reinforcing? Avoidance. So we've got to watch ourselves too. Okay? ACT is behavioral. So we got to watch our own behaviors, the functions of our own behaviors in session. Okay. What are you avoiding or fused with the issue that you brought today? Either a personal issue or your client's issue that you brought. What's your client avoiding or fused with? Take a couple minutes, write a little bit, see what you can come up with. What might be too uncomfortable to acknowledge or address? What might seem unquestionably true or unavoidable? Okay, it's looking like most folks are ready. Keep writing if you got some stuff to work out with that question. So here's our main goal as ACT therapists is to develop psychological flexibility. In between avoidance and fusion is being flexible and present with what is happening here. We're trying to assist our clients in finding that, and ideally that's who we are as therapists, as we are flexibly present in the room with our clients. We're not thinking about groceries. We're not thinking about the last session. We're not thinking about what we're going to make for dinner when we get home. We're right here in the room with the client, with what's happening. Okay. Questions, comments, feedback so far with avoidance, fusion, psychological flexibility? Yeah.
So when we learn something new, our brain compares it to past experiences so that we can understand it better. Is fusion different in that it causes symptoms and the client's uncomfortable with it?
So you're asking a good question. And one of the things you're speaking to is how the engine works under the hood of the car. There are really specific ways in which our brain organizes information and relates them to each other. Like we might associate ball, round, bounce, and all those things kind of lead to one another. This is called relational frame theory, and it underlies ACT. Fusion is an active process of stuckness. And delving deeper into ACT, we can look at how relational frame theory leads to fusion. I think that might be the best I can do to answer your question today with the time that we have. Did I get it a little bit? Okay, cool. Thank you. Any other questions, comments, feedback on anything we've covered so far? Okay, let's move flexibly on. So, 3 basic processes in ACT. This is on your handout, and you'll notice that the 6 core processes are listed around the edges of the triangle. So our values in session are be present, be open, do what matters. Super basic. Around the edges of the triangle, and this is on the other side of your handout, this is called the hexaflex. 6 basic moves in session. Everything you say and everything you do in session can be one of these 6 moves, okay? At the top, classically, it's called contact with the present moment, but this was the prettiest hexaflex I found, so it just says being present. On the left, acceptance and diffusion. At the bottom, self as context. On the right, values and committed action. All of these processes interweave to help a client create psychological flexibility. Here we go. We're going to go into the 6. Okay? Contact with the present moment. And I'm going to pass around a little bag of raisins. I'd like to invite each of you to take 1 or 2, and we're going to do an exercise once it makes it around the room. So, contact with the present moment means just that. This is what mindfulness is. Mindfulness is a big word. It's been around the counseling field for a little while now. It doesn't mean that we're sitting on a cushion, oming. It means that we're being present with what's happening in the room. This is what we do all day, every day, ideally, as we're present with our clients. So we're modeling it for them already, okay? The past and the future don't exist. Where are they? Where's the past? Right here. Where's the future? Right here. Okay? In those inner theaters we have in our mind. Our minds are like a time machine. I don't know how often we stay right here in the present, or how often we're in our time machine visiting some future event, making plans, worrying about something that might happen, or how often we're in the past, thinking about something embarrassing that we said or did, or thinking about something that happened long ago that we feel nostalgic for. Our mind is a time machine. And this is it's one of the main things that separates us from mammals. We can project into the future and think about possible outcomes, and we can go back to the past and generate these specific memories. Okay? Now, there's a reason that this is in some ways for us maladaptive. Okay? Early humans sitting around the fire at night, the folks who heard noises in the bushes and went, "Oh, it's probably just the wind," those folks didn't survive. Right? The folks whose minds could imagine into the future something that might happen and then work to avoid it were the folks who survived. Us anxious people. That's who survived. Okay? So it's a core process of the brain that we're engaging here when we engage that time machine and try to help folks come into the present. Does almost everybody have raisins? Okay. So let's do a little mindfulness exercise, and this is something that you can do in session. I want to invite you just to hold that raisin in between your fingers or in your palm. Just take a look at it. Notice the wrinkles. Is it just one color, or is it a few different shades of colors? Feel the textures. What's that feel like in your palm or between your fingers? Give it a little squeeze. Is it real dry and hard? Is it plump? What's it like? Give it a smell. Does a raisin have a smell? And then, if you're willing, put it in your mouth. Don't chew it yet. Just put it on your tongue and just kind of feel it there. Notice, is my mouth watering yet? What's it feel like there? How's the texture feel? Different maybe than it did when it was in my fingers. Is there any taste at all before we bite it? And then you're welcome to bite it or chew it a little bit and just kind of notice its consistency. Is it real squishy, or do you have to chew real hard? And notice that taste start to come into your mouth. Is it sweet? Did you get a tangy one? Is it dispersing all through your mouth, or is it just staying in a few little chunks? And feel free to swallow whenever feels appropriate. So that's a basic mindfulness exercise. That's a way to help our clients be in contact with the present moment, right? Most of us probably weren't thinking too hard about other stuff. We were really just being with that raisin. So that's what contact with the present moment is. Lacking contact with the present moment, we're going to revisit the inverse of every of these processes, okay? Living in the past or future, regret, worrying about stuff, dissociation is definitely not being in contact with the present moment, okay? Excessive use of video games and phones, pornography, anything but being here now, anything but. Our culture really struggles with this, I think. Anything but being present with what's happening right here, right now.
There are those who think that video games are very mindful because they're very absorbed by the process of the game or whatever they're doing.
I could see that, video games being mindful. And the way we can look at it through an ACT lens is this workable? How's it working? What's the cost? If somebody plays video games mindfully and it doesn't impact any other area of their lives, great. But if it's not workable, right? If they're doing it all the time, they're not eating, they're not sleeping, they're not able to form relationships, then we might be talking about a fusion process.
I've supported some of that when someone's feeling really overwhelmed with stuff to use as a distraction. Mm-hmm. And take some time, watch cartoons, whatever you want to do to keep a break from this because you don't need to do it all the time.
Then it becomes about what the intent is. Is
Yeah.
the intent to briefly distract, to be able to regulate and come back to it, or is the goal ultimately to avoid whatever the situation is with no intention of coming back to it?
Yeah. Yeah, and the person I'm thinking of in particular, she was becoming so absorbed with the thoughts that I was trying to support her taking a break from that so that she didn't get so distraught. Because that was not working, right?
Great. And y'all are illustrating these ACT questions. Is this workable? Is this flexible? Are we avoiding? Are we moving in a valued direction of I'm going to give myself just a break because I know my tendency is this thing and video games are something that I value? Great. Balance. Psychological flexibility. Talk about the relationship, everything bad this person's doing. All right. They're not in contact with their own distress that's in the room, their own frustration, their old wound that's in the room. They're talking about that person over there. And so for me, it's a specific process of, you know what? That person's not here right now, and we're not really doing couples therapy. So why don't we talk about what is happening for you right now? If you take some breaths, what do you notice inside yourself as you talk about this frustration you have? Okay? So, the issue you brought today, either your personal issue or the client's issue, how is it taking you or the client out of the present moment? So with this concept of the present moment, I want to talk a little bit about the function of attention. And this is more me than ACT, but it's congruent. So our attention is a thing. It's like a literal thing, right? It's like this lens that we have that we move around. Right now, your attention might be on my words, then it might be on an itch, then it might pop to the past, then it might come back because I'm still droning on and on. So our attention is a thing, okay? It's where we are choosing, or not always choosing, to receive and process stimuli. Some people might have a really narrow focus. They might only be able to pay attention to one thing at a time. Others may have a really broad focus and be able to multitask or my understanding of folks who are on the autism spectrum is their locus of attention is too big, and they're getting so much stimuli, they don't know how to narrow the focus. Okay? Most clients who struggle with being present in the moment are struggling with where is their attention. They can't focus their locus of attention. Okay? Has anybody ever started to practice meditation and then realized how busy their mind is? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's our locus of attention. It's not just our thoughts. I mean, that alone can be like, oh my God, I can't believe my radio's on all the time like that. But also our attention to the past, to the future, to something else, to something else, to something else. Okay? Whatever we give our attention to, we get more of. We give our attention to movies, we're going to get more of that drama and conflict. If we give our attention to a garden, we're going to get more of that. We're going to get more flowers, more vegetables. We're going to get more of what we enjoy about gardening, peace, tranquility. We give our attention to self-critical thoughts, we're going to get more of those. So part of the practice of flexibly contacting the present moment is the process of gaining some autonomy of where our locus of attention is going. For me, that's the purpose of meditation. It's not to sit and om, but it's to have some autonomy over where my attention is going. Okay? So, techniques for contacting the present moment. One of my favorites, as you say that, what do you notice inside? You may notice there's a strong overlay here with fusion. Self as content is total fusion. Okay? All right. Techniques for self as context. Super simple. I don't know if this will work for concrete folks or not. They say, no, I'm so hurt, et cetera, et cetera. Who's noticing that? Who's noticing that? What part of you is noticing that? We can also encourage them to kind of zoom out. Okay, so you've brought this, this, and this today. Let's zoom way out. And let's make a theater in the middle of the room between us and our minds. And on the theater is you, and then so, and then we'll build the little stage, because this is what happened. Let's just zoom way out and take a look. So now we're observing. We're observing what's happening. The chessboard metaphor. I really like this one. I just used it the other day. Okay, client struggling with something. Trying to quit drinking, okay? So we have them say, okay, let's imagine a chessboard. You ever play chess or checkers? Okay? On one side, black pieces. On the other side, white or red pieces, okay? Just going back and forth, right? The black pieces are you trying to quit drinking, you trying to get a new job, and the white pieces are your self-critical thoughts or that person that gets in the way, back and forth, back and forth. And the pieces in this game are infinite. Okay? Some black pieces get taken out, more show up. White pieces get taken out, more show up. This battle is going to be endless. Now imagine that you are lying flat on your back underneath all these chess pieces. You're the chessboard. Okay? Take some breaths into that. You're this chessboard underneath this battle that's happening. Back and forth. Back and forth. No matter who seems like they're winning or losing, doesn't affect you. You're just laying there watching the battle. Make sense? Okay. Wastebasket exercise. Most of us have a wastebasket. in our practice room. So the client is telling a story, and they're like, blah, 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 and this self-critical thought, like, oh, that thought? Okay, so you're the wastebasket, here's the thought, all right? So you're having that thought. Oh, and you felt hurt and ashamed. Here's your hurt and ashamed feeling. I'm being a little more casual than I would be in session. Oh, here's that next thought. Yep, having that. Oh, yeah, then there's this part too. Here's what Jane said about you. You have that too. So the client is having all these thoughts and feelings, right? Are you those thoughts and feelings? Can you have more? You might have this next part of it. You might have this next part of it. These might come back. Oh, that one's back. That one's back. Are you these thoughts and feelings? That's the observing self. That's the witness right there. It's a part of us that's noticing all the thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Very concrete intervention to use for self as context. And this is like diffusion plus, right? We're going to get into some more specific diffusion techniques in a little bit. Okay. So that is the be present point of the triangle, and it's our center column in the hexaflex. Contact with the present moment and self as context. Any questions, comments, feedback on these two processes? Yeah.
So if there's that client that is doing a breathe-in now, and I mean, I work with someone who says, well, that's what works for me, you know, just to take a deep breath and I can't do anything else, I just hold my breath. We just do the rolling with resistance thing, or do you teach even about like what happens to the brain when you do breathe, or?
I might try that. You know, is that workable for the client? Maybe. Is there a part of it that's not workable for the client? Can we reflect that we also see the tension in their bodies when they're holding their breath? Maybe that's a little bit of an in. You know, we're not trying to like bowl over somebody's resistance, but we want to help support them in finding more flexibility. Any other questions, feedback, comments on anything we've talked about so far? Okay, we're an hour and a half deep. We've got an hour and a half to cover the other 4 processes and a few practice sessions. Let's take a 15-minute break. Is it 15? Yeah, 15 minutes. Please be back by about 2:45.
So what if the client has an issue that they're struggling against, but it's an unknown thing? They just know that there's this big lump of anxiety in their lives, and whenever they try to get close to it, they just run up, they avoid it. But they don't even know how to get close to it, they don't know what it is.
So yeah, good question. So even if they don't know what that thing is, they're still going to be experiencing it in the present moment in their bodies, that anxiety. And so that's something that we can start working with any of these 6 processes. With acceptance, are you willing to explore this a little bit? First technique. Second technique, what might it be like to just breathe into this feeling and make some room for it? Let's make some room for this feeling. That's what anxiety is. It's a feeling in our body. It's a sensation in our body. A lot of folks are really cognitively oriented. We'll talk about thoughts instead of feelings, but just about every client, occasionally there are folks who have been so abused they can't really feel their bodies very well. But most folks are able to identify sensations in their bodies that are at the root of what we call anxiety or depression, etc. Does that connect?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. As I've asked a few times in a different in different ways. Are you willing to have this uncomfortable thing, this experience, and continue moving your life forward in a valued direction? Okay, Stephen Hayes has the wade through the swamp, okay? So there's a mountain that you want to get to, but before we can get to that mountain and climb the mountain, we got to go through a swamp. There's no going around it. Totally surrounds the mountain. Are you willing to get dirty, get into that swamp, get up to your waist in mucky water, push through weeds, slap at some mosquitoes? Are you willing to have that experience if going up the mountain is of value to you? I'd like to lead us through an exercise. I'm also cognizant of the time, hour 15, 4 processes. Let's try it. I want to invite you, we're going to do a somatic exercise that comes from, I want to say either TRM or CRM, forget, trauma resiliency model, I think. I want to invite you all to think of something that makes you feel mildly uncomfortable or irritated. Okay, something that's like at a 3 or a 4 on a scale of 1 to 10. Something somebody said to you, a slightly embarrassing memory, something that's frustrating. Let me give you a minute just to think about something, then we're going to work with it. Okay, so taking some breaths, I want to invite you to notice where in your body you're experiencing discomfort. We usually have a physical reaction. If you don't find anything, I'm going to speed us through this. I wouldn't do it like this with a client, but I want to invite you just to pretend it's in your stomach or your chest. That's most often where people say they feel some discomfort, okay? So I invite you to put a hand on your body wherever that feeling of discomfort is, or on your stomach or chest if you're not feeling it right now. We're just going to practice the exercise anyway. Take a few breaths and just notice that gentle pressure of your hand. Notice if it feels warm or cool. Notice it rise and fall as you breathe in and out. And then if it's okay, let's move our attention inside to that discomfort and just notice, how big is it? Is it a golf ball? Is it a dinner plate? Watermelon? Just how big it is. And come on back to your hand. Notice if it's any warmer. Notice that gentle, comforting pressure. And then swing your attention back inside and check out the textures of this feeling. Is it cold or hot? Electric? Empty? Tense? Just notice the textures and sensations. And then come on back to your hand. Notice it might be warmer still. Notice it rise and fall as you breathe in and out, or notice the pulse you might be able to feel in your hand. Then come on back inside to that uncomfortable sensation and notice, where is it on a scale of 1 to 10? If 1 is, I barely feel it, and 10 is, this is the worst I've ever felt anything in my life. Just scale it 1 to 10. Then come on back to your hand. Notice it may even be warmer now. Notice that gentle, comforting pressure. Notice where your pinky is. Bless you. And then in one last time to that uncomfortable sensation, how old or familiar is this feeling? Notice anything that stirs up. And then back to your hand. Notice that warmth and that pressure. Notice it move as you breathe in and out. And then if you're willing, I want to invite you to feel your hand on that spot. Like you might put your hand on a dog or a cat, or your child if you have children. or a partner. Notice your hand holding that feeling, and I want to invite you in your inside voice, your internal voice, to say to this feeling, I see you. And I'm here with you. Take a few more breaths in and out, and whenever you're ready, you're welcome to relax your hand and open your eyes. So with pendulation, we're doing a couple things. One is we're helping the client notice that they have autonomy over their locus of attention. We're moving it back and forth to the uncomfortable sensation to something comforting, to the uncomfortable sensation to the comforting. And each time we're just noticing one thing about it. How big is it? What are the textures? What is it 1 to 10? How familiar is it? And so we're helping them practice acceptance in a way where they're like dipping their toe in it, coming back out. Dipping their toe in it, coming back out. So it's not all up in their face. Okay? The final piece, I see you and I'm here with you, I've added to the pendulation exercise, and that's pure acceptance. I see you, sensation that I've been struggling against or fighting, and I'm here with you. The implicit message is I accept you. I can't tell you how many times I've done this with people for the first time, and they start leaking tears when they accept this feeling, the sensation they've been fighting against for probably most of their lives. Sometimes the tears come when I ask, how familiar is this? Oh, this isn't about what just happened this week. This is about something I've been feeling my whole life. Okay, so I see you and I'm here with you is the acceptance piece. I've even had clients listen to see what it says, and they might be like, it said, finally, you see me. Okay? So we're not trying to talk our clients into acceptance. We're trying to have them have a visceral experience of acceptance and what that means and feels like. Okay. Diffusion, number 4. I love this description. Diffusion is looking at our thoughts and feelings rather than through them. Okay? You'll notice a lot of overlay with self as context, self as content. Diffusion is actively working towards self as context. So we already went through the prefrontal cortex. That separates us from mammals. We can imagine into the future. We can imagine into the past. Our mind is this thing that's like on an alert system and always noticing things to tell us about them because they might be dangerous or might be important. Okay? It's also incredibly nuanced. You know, we imagined a lemon wedge and bit into it and our salivary glands started going. It's very powerful, our minds. And diffusion also talks about the mind as an entity. It's a way to separate from I, right? And so we might say, I notice my mind is telling me that I'm not really hearing you in session. Do you feel like I'm getting what you're saying? Right? We can talk about the mind as a thing to model diffusion, to model that language for our clients. Oh, I'm noticing your mind is telling you that same story that you're never going to find a partner, etc. Are you noticing that? Okay. Presence of fusion. The inner critic, our old friend. Everybody's got one. As far as I know, I've never met anybody who's like, I don't know what you're talking about. If you hear the word should, that's fusion. You ever heard the phrase, you're shoulding all over yourself? Yep. Shoulds equals fusion. A lot of comparison, a lot of evaluation. And me, I work on a somatic basis. Like I feel things in the room. If I feel stuck and there's a stuckness in the room, there's a heaviness, there's some fusion going on. That's what's happening. Something's just stuck and won't move. Especially if we feel stuck or frustrated with a client and with that process. Okay. Clinical example of fusion, hypochondriac. Oh, the client, notice my neck is swelling a little bit. I wonder if that's my spinal fluid. It might be cancer. I might be dying. If I die, what is my wife going to do? What about my children? It just goes and goes and goes. One thought that could just be like, oh, my neck's a little swollen today. That's weird. Anyway, honey, let's have oatmeal for breakfast. But there's a fusion with it, and then there's a fusion with that process that just keeps going. Make sense? Okay. So, how might you, with your issue or your client, be fused with something? You're looking through it instead of at it. What belief are you fused with? What thoughts or feelings is your client fused with? So stuck in that it just seems unavoidable. It's got to be true. It's facts, man. It's real. Okay. So some techniques for diffusion. What I was just describing with the hypochondriac who has the sore neck and then all of a sudden, boom, 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 boom. You ever play that game where you set up dominoes in a line and all these patterns around the room and then you knock over one and it goes... Okay? That can be a useful metaphor when we talk with clients. Like, I notice you have this thought, then what's the next automatic thought? Then what's the next automatic thought? And they'll be able to identify it. They know how that domino spiral goes. They've been doing it for years. And so drawing back from it and seeing it as an automatic process helps them to diffuse. They're like, oh, right. Okay? We can also thank our mind for the thought. Somebody's having intrusive memories of their kids dying in a car crash. Just keeps coming no matter what. They've been fighting it. We frame out the prefrontal cortex and how it's this warning system that's developed for us as humans. When we frame it as, this is your mind trying to help you. This is your mind trying to imagine bad things so that you're prepared. It's this process that kind of sucks, but it's trying to help you. So let's try something. Let's go, thanks, mind. Thanks for that warning thought. I appreciate it, I know they're safe. Thanks for letting me know. Okay, let's focus on something else. So we're acknowledging that intrusive thought. We're saying, thanks, mind. We're setting it aside. It's that flexible piece. It's not right here. Okay, thanks, mind. Thanks for that thought. We can ask, where is that thought or feeling? Because it sounds like it's right up on you. You probably noticed I've done this about 20 times in the workshop. I'm somatic based. I was a massage therapist for 20 years. So where is that thought? It sounds like it's right up here. The client goes, yeah. I'm like, okay, let's take it. Let's just bring it out here for a minute and take a look at it. What's it say? Then we might move to up on the wall. Okay? You can do this in two ways. I'm going to describe it rather than practicing it, and then we'll practice another one. Okay? Up on the wall works two ways. With a thought, we can take a thought. Say the client's recurring thought is, I'm worthless and I'm never going to have friends. Okay? So we invite them to put that thought up on the wall, big mural style. Just put it up there. Notice the font you're going to put it in. Is it painted? Is it sketched? Notice the color of the letters. And then have them erase it and then just think it in their mind. I'm worthless. I'm never going to have friends. Have them notice the difference between it being up on the wall and in their head. Then have them put it up on the wall again. I'm worthless and I'm never going to have friends. And most clients will notice a somatic difference where when they're thinking the thought in their mind, just like we were eating the lemon wedge, that thought seems real and intense and I'm feeling anxious. But when I put it up on the wall, out of my mind, then it has less impact on me. Okay? You can also, if they're replaying experiences or imagining, dire future events, we can invite them to put a TV screen up on the wall and imagine that scene is playing up on the TV screen, and then they've got the remote control and they change the tint, they turn the volume down, change the channel to some cartoons, change it back. Maybe it changes itself back. That's fine. We're not trying to force anything to happen. We're just playing around with it. Then have them imagine the scenario, then have them put it back up on the wall. So same thing. We're helping the client gain some distance on that thought or that internal experience that feels so real and putting it up on the wall. Make sense? Okay. So now we're going to practice one called silly voice. I want to invite you to think of something that you might say to yourself. You're going to lose your job if you don't cut it out. Nobody's going to take you seriously. I can't believe they gave you a license. All right. So take a minute, just think about that. What's something you might say to yourself? You to say it out loud, or in your mind if you're not ready to say it out loud, in a really silly voice. I can't believe you're doing this in front of people. They're going to think you're really crazy. They're going to report you to the board. Okay? Let's go ahead, take a minute. If you're feeling bold, do it out loud. If you're not, do it in your internal voice. What does your internal silly voice sound like? Is anyone bold enough to do it out loud? Don't say it out loud. Everyone's going to make fun of you. They're all going to laugh at you. And this is usually what happens in the room with a client who has a certain amount of willingness. They're often embarrassed and it's hard to do out loud, so they'll usually do it in their mind. Sometimes they'll do it out loud with you. And we crack up. It's great. And suddenly this thing they've been saying to themselves that seems so real and so negative is suddenly so funny. So funny.
Do you use that for them when they are willing to do it?
I'll model it just like I did here.
Will you model their thought?
I would if they shared it. Yeah. I haven't had anyone refuse to participate yet. I have had folks who are so fused with the thought that when they do silly voice, they feel like they're mocking themselves. And then that causes a lot of discomfort. So we breathe with that. I'm like, we are not trying to be mean. We're not trying to be mean to yourself. Let's notice that this feels really fragile. Let's be, we might practice acceptance, contact with what's happening. So that has happened a few times, but I haven't had anybody refuse to do it. So that's silly voice, one of my favorites. Okay, so that's acceptance and diffusion, which is our open up triangle. Any questions or comments on acceptance or diffusion? Anything popping up for anybody in general? We've got, great.
Is there any relevance to where these things are on the hexaflex versus the triangle and how they connect? I noticed they got these lines connecting in. Is there importance of that?
Not that I recall. They're arranged in the columns in a certain way, like we've hit the middle column, then we hit the left column, now we're going to hit the right, but that's the only arrangement part I'm aware of. Yeah, thanks for the question. Okay, so we've got 2 processes left and almost an hour, so I'm pretty sure we're going to finish, which is great. We'll do some practice stuff at the end as well. All right, let's move into the last couple processes. Here we go. Values. Integral to ACT. Who do we want to be? How do we want to act? We're not talking about being an astronaut. We're not talking about being rich. Let's talk a little bit about values versus goals. Okay? A value is not a destination. Okay? A goal is something that you can accomplish or not. I want to lose 5 pounds. I want to learn to play the guitar. A value is a process, it's an action. I want to be a compassionate person. I want to act compassionately. There's no end place we're going to reach with values. Right? It's an ongoing process. I can talk about playing sports, or I can talk about playing in a supportive way, playing in a connected way, playing in a passionate way. And they're chosen. They're desires we have for ourselves. They're not our old friend, the should. Okay? It's things that we want to have for our life. And watch for fusion, you know. It's like my goal is, my value is to act compassionately, like, oh, I wasn't compassionate the other day. Right? Watch for fusion with that. It's not a yes-no switch where we're either compassionate or not, but we can always move that value a little bit forward. Yeah?
I'm just thinking of it's not a should, but it probably comes from the shoulds we learned as kids, some of the values, right? So there's a connection.
They might. Yeah. I mean, we should be kind. Yeah. But are we operating out of a genuine desire to be kind? Mm-hmm. So it really comes down to what is it that we want? How do we want to act? You know, we need to be careful not to impose our values on our clients. You know, if a client has a value of being really sexually active in a polyamorous relationship and doing sex work, and we look at it from an ACT perspective and don't see how that is literally unworkable for their life, if it's all workable and those are their values, then we need to be careful not to impose our values on them, to support them in their values. Okay? Values are not goals, they're not needs, they're not feelings, they're not morals, they're not ethics. They might be based in those things, but they're ongoing processes. My favorite metaphor for this is heading west. Okay? Our value is heading west. We're going to get to California. Did we reach west? Kind of. Can we keep going west? Yeah. We go across the ocean. We get to another continent. Can we keep going west? Yeah. We can always go west. We can keep going west. We're never going to reach anywhere that is finally, aha, I have arrived at west and there is no more west I can go. Make sense? Cool. Lack of values is a poor sense of self-identity or self-esteem. I just want to be happy. What does that mean? What would your life look like? What would you be doing if you were happy? That's a values question. I just want to have fun. What are some things that you do to have fun? What would your life look like if you were having fun? Well, I'd be out at independent film festivals more, you know. What is it that you value about that? Oh, just the creativity and the connection. Creativity and connection. So there are the values. Okay, following me? Okay. Dead person's goals are goals that a corpse can accomplish. I want to stop drinking. Dead person can do that. What would you be doing instead if you weren't drinking? I want to stop being anxious. Dead person isn't anxious. What would you be doing instead of sitting at home feeling anxious? Okay? Here's something cool. Within the client's pain, distress, or struggle, the value's hidden in there. Okay? They're two sides of a coin. The struggle and the issue hides a value that's not being fulfilled. What's a struggle, a common struggle you might see in your practice? Something somebody comes in with. Anyone? Anxiety. Okay. So I'm so anxious. What are people anxious about? Or how does their anxiety present?
Like with friends and people,
relationships. Yeah. These things that are important to them. The friendships are important. The relationships are important. I'm anxious about this thing because I have this value hidden inside it. Maybe the value is connection. Maybe the value is kindness and compassion. Maybe the value is supportiveness. So the value is hidden inside the presenting issue. Lonely guy. Lonely guy goes to work and kind of has some work friends, but he doesn't hang out with them after work or on the weekends, because what if it goes bad? You know? He just stays at home, and he comes into the office and he presents with depression, and I'm just so lonely, and I just don't know what to do. And hidden in all that loneliness is a desire for connection, a desire for friendship, a desire to be in collaboration on creative projects. So we help lonely guy figure out what those hidden values are. So with the issue that you brought today, your own issue or the client's issue that you're struggling with, what values are missing or unfulfilled? Take a minute and write it down. Okay. So some techniques to start getting at values. I really like to ask clients, what are some of your best qualities as a person? Sometimes people don't even know. So it's great to get them thinking, start thinking about themselves in a positive light. People usually can come up with at least one or two. And I'll start writing these down. I don't write much down in session, but values are something we're going to keep returning to. So I'll often keep a list in their file of the values that we come up with. But they might say like, oh, I don't know, kind of hem and haw, in which case I go to plan B, which is, if I ask some people that are close with you, what would they say some of your best qualities are? Then sometimes folks are able to come up with a few. And if they're not, they've got some homework for the next session. Go home, talk to some people that you're close with, and ask them, what do they value about you? Either way, we end up with a list. Sometimes it's 10 items long, sometimes it's 3, but that's workable to start with values. People say that I'm understanding. People say that I'm patient. People love that I'm just a really creative painter and really passionate about that process. Okay, so that's one way to start getting at values. The magic wand question. They're really struggling with something. I want to quit drinking. I don't want to be such a jerk anymore. If I waved my magic wand, which I can't because I lent it out, sorry. But if I waved my magic wand, what would you be doing if suddenly you weren't drinking and that other thing you just said? What would you be doing instead? Well, I'd be working on the script that's been in my drawer. I'd be looking up recipes in a cookbook because I really enjoy cooking and the different tastes and flavors and things. Okay, that's the magic wand question. Within the activity is the value. What's the value of the cooking? Well, I just feel passionate and creative when I do it. Or I throw these dinner parties for people and I just really value like caring for them and like nourishing them. The next step we're going to take is committed action, which is the doing part. And within the actions, within the behaviors, we'll find the values. Yeah.
When I work with clients, I have a list, and I know Harris has it online as well, but he has a list of values, and it's kind of helpful. It has like 40 of them on it. I've got one that has 80 of them on it, and it's nice for people. I'll give it as homework after the first session, so then when they come back, I can kind of help them be in service of this.
Awesome.
That's helpful too. You can get it online. I think it's Happiness Track you might have online, and within there you can get his list. It's sometimes confusing because the list sometimes gets you lost in that idea between a value, it's like a thing, versus like the desired attitude you're seeking. So the list is helpful for a lot of people.
I'm going to suggest that book at the end, or suggest Harris and his videos and things. We'll get to it in the resources section. If you're really interested in ACT and this workshop is like super exciting and you're like, yes, I want to be an ACT therapist, there are so many resources online. Values sheets, worksheets, YouTube videos, all kinds of stuff. Thanks for bringing that up. And I hope you're getting something out of this workshop if you're already familiar with Harris and ACT and everything. Don't tell me now. All right. One more values exercise, captain of the ship. All right. This is one of my favorites. I use it with most clients, and this doesn't just hit values. It hits a lot of different pieces, diffusion, acceptance, etc. In ACT, it's called passengers on the bus, but I've adapted it a little bit into a values context. Okay. So it goes like this. We are not just one self, we are many selves. Okay? Have you ever been in conflict with yourself? Yeah. Okay, so we're many selves. All of our selves are together on a ship. Mine is a pirate ship. Yours could be whatever kind of ship you want. It could be a hippie school bus. It could be a pirate ship. It could be a spaceship. It could be a yacht, a cruise liner. Whatever you want, okay? Every ship needs to have a captain. Even on my anarchist pirate ship, it needs to be somebody's job to help everybody on the ship coordinate to work together to move in a valued direction. It doesn't mean that my captain is an authoritarian. He's not a dictator. But he's helping everybody else communicate, arrange, work together. Okay? When we start to list values, we're describing the captain of our ship. Who are we and who do we want to be? And with most folks, there's going to be a relational element to the captain. And so we can engage with that to help them relate to other parts of themselves. Okay? I've got a guy up in the crow's nest of my pirate ship whose job is to look for danger, to scan the horizon. Useful role, right? If he's running around the ship screaming like his hair is on fire, we're all gonna die, look out, abandoned ship, freaking everybody out, not helpful, right? So it's my job as the captain to figure out how that guy can play his useful role on the ship. I figure out what he needs, how I relate to him, so that he can function and not send the ship off in some other direction that we all don't want to go. I've got another guy whose job it is to walk around the ship and go, those ropes need to be coiled, the cannons need to be polished, time to swab the deck. Useful. If he's walking around the deck of the ship, putting people in chains, telling them that they're pieces of crap, that they're worthless, that everything is wrong, not helpful.
That all reminds me of the internal systems theory, like Schwartz.
Yep, a lot of overlay with internal family systems. Yep. All kinds of parts on the ship. There's war captains, we don't want them firing off at every ship that approaches. And everybody on the ship needs to be working together and if we want to go in a valued direction. Otherwise, we're lost at sea, we're stuck in the harbor. Okay? So at its root, when we're talking about values work, we're talking about developing that captain, and then with the acceptance, the diffusion, those pieces, we're helping the captain work with everybody else on the ship. Because people are generally fighting parts of themselves on the ship. They might be fighting their sensitive feeler person. They might be fighting their inner critic, or their inner critic is fighting them. And so when we develop the captain, we're helping them to work with those parts of themselves more effectively.
I could see this working well with using Jungian archetypes.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Different parts.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
I learned this from your healing sexual trauma training. And
Cool.
the word that I love most about it is when you said you can't push anybody off the ship. And I've used that with clients because they're like, well, I just want to get rid of that part of me. And I'm like, well, you can't push it off the ship.
Thanks for reminding me about that part. Yeah. So we can't make anybody walk the plank. Not really possible. We might try, and they're going to splash around for a while, and then they're just going to climb right back up and keep doing the same thing, maybe worse. Thanks. So that's values. Now we're going to move into committed action. We're in the home stretch. Home stretch. So committed action is already happening in every session. So we have something to start with. The client is showing up. They're participating. They might be doing the exercises you suggest in session. They might be trying to breathe with you. They might not, but they're showing up. So there's a place to start. Committed action is working with those values and taking them a step forward. Okay? And again, watch out for fusion with resistance to committed action. Oh, I can't because nobody's going to like me, or Something I like to tell clients when we're talking about committed action and how they're going to be working to implement more of these values in their lives is from the Tao Te Ching. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. That's it. One step forward, and you're on the journey. That's all it takes. Okay? When committed action is missing in action, we're looking again at stuckness and a lot of fusion. Sometimes there are impossible or extreme goals. I want to be a rock star. I want to be a multi-billionaire. And so we can find the values in those extreme goals. Well, what would you be feeling if you were a rock star? Oh man, people would just be giving me attention. You know, they'd be telling me they like my songs. They'd want to spend time with me. Oh, sounds like lonely guy. They're probably out of touch with their values if they're not moving their life forward. They're not sure what direction to move it in. Might be afraid. More social connection is probably one of the most common values/goals that I see in therapy. People want more connection. And I validate that. You know, we're social beings. We're wired for it. Sometimes people shame themselves for wanting connection, for wanting approval, for wanting validation. I'm like, hey, we're wired for this stuff. We're social creatures. We're animals on that level, you know? We're wired for oxytocin, the I'm safe and connected and everything's okay hormone. This is normal. This is normal for what you want. I want more connection. And so we'll take specific steps. We'll look at what some of their values are, some of their valued activities. And then I'll often have clients either Google like hiking groups, Asheville, or there's a website called meetup.com where groups of people meet up to do stuff they like to do. And then, as we'll get into with committed action, we'll just break it down a little bit. I'm like, okay, your homework first is just to Google hiking groups Asheville and just look at some of the links that come up. That's it. That's your only homework for the week. Is we're taking this big goal, value, I want more social connection. We're breaking it down into a very small step that they can take. Okay? So before we get into more talk about techniques for committed action, how are you, or your client issue that you brought, how are you missing committed action in that valued direction with the issue that you brought? So it sounds like you're sitting with the stuckness, the heaviness, everything that they have on their plate, they're sitting with that. And so perhaps the direction first to go with that is the acceptance and the being with that in a flexible way. It might not be time for committed action right there, but you might find it. You may find it.
She has done some things. I've known her for several years now. She has been able to carve out time to do some things, because we've said you really need more. And she's been really aware of that, so she's tried. But it's so hard sometimes for people to carve out a little spot on their plate to put one more piece.
Yeah, I hear it. Yeah, I had a baby, bought a foreclosure we had to remodel, and went to grad school all at the same time. I get it. I'll never do that again. Yeah. Okay. So, techniques for committed action. Y'all probably remember SMART goals from grad school. If you don't, there's the anagram? Acronym. Thank you. The acronym. Specific. Not, I want world peace. Measurable. I want to lose 5 pounds. Can definitely measure that. Achievable. Can actually do it. Relevant. Is it relevant to my values, to the things that I've already worked through? Time bound. I'm going to do this within 2 weeks. I'm a huge fan of tiny steps. With that social connection piece, their first homework is to Google some things and just look them up on the internet. That's it. Their next goal is to pick one, but just to drive past where it happens. That's it. Just to drive past. Their next goal is to put one event and date on the calendar. They don't have to go. They just have to put it on the calendar. Okay? Then the next goal might be to go on the night of the meeting, but just sit in the parking lot. And they get bonus points if they actually go ahead and do it, but that's not required. That's not what's expected of them. Just those tiny goals. And I rarely have someone come in and say, I didn't even do that. And if they did, we work on, okay, well, where are you feeling resistant? Let's be with that. Are you willing to breathe with this resistance? What's it feel like? How old is this? Are you willing to make some room for it? If we could talk to it, what would it say? Right? There's always an opportunity to work another area of the hexaflex. That's the beauty of ACT, right? You can always move to another area of the hexaflex and keep working that issue and find where it's going to move. What are you not doing right now that you know would take you in this direction, in this valued direction? Okay. Any questions, comments, feedback on values and committed action, or any of the 6 steps before we move into weaving it all together in the last 30 minutes? Anybody feeling stuck with any of this?
I'm not clear on the concept of fusion.
Fusion. Yeah, so fusion is looking through thoughts or feelings, being so identified with them that we can't get any space from them. They seem so real and so true. I'm a loser. Janine will never treat me with respect. Where we can take that thought or that feeling and just get a little distance from it and take a look at it and see, oh, I'm not this thought or this feeling, I'm having this thought or feeling. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Any other feedback, questions, stuckness, boredom? I know it's Friday afternoon. There's Starbucks over there if you need a little inspiration to make it through the last half hour. And we're going to do some practice stuff too. Okay. Here's one of the best parts about ACT. There's no wrong move. None. You can choose any of those 6 core processes at any time. If something doesn't feel like it's quite flying, shift to another one. Okay? Doesn't mean you're not going to make mistakes. We can make mistakes as clinicians. At the 4-day boot camp in Philadelphia, they had us pair up and, work an issue. One of us is a therapist, one of us is the client. Therapist is sitting and facing the big PowerPoint, okay? And then every minute or so, they randomly flashed one of the core 6 processes up on the wall, and as the therapist, we had to use that one. And it was a little awkward, but it worked. It was a really interesting process. You really can use any one of the 6, okay? So, we're going to do a little show of hands game, okay? And there's no wrong answer, right? No wrong answer. Client says, I really think I should quit drinking, but I don't think I can. I've tried again and again. I'm so pissed off at myself. Okay? So, 6 core processes. Raise your hand if you go to contact with the present moment. Okay? Raise your hand if you go to self as context. Okay? Raise your hand if you go to acceptance. Okay? Diffusion. Values. Committed action. No wrong answer. We can go any way with what the client just brought. Okay? I should quit drinking. Contact with the present moment. As you say that, what do you notice inside? Probably some frustration, maybe some shame. That's what we're going to find. Self as context. We could use the chessboard metaphor. Pieces battling back and forth on this chessboard. Let's be the chessboard for a moment. Acceptance. What might it be like to breathe into the struggle? It feels like you're really struggling with this. I can even feel it in my own body. What might it be like just to breathe into the struggle you're feeling? Are you willing to make some room for this with a few breaths? Diffusion. Where is this thought I should quit drinking, but I can't? It sounds like it's all right up here. Does that seem right? Values. If you weren't drinking, what would you be doing instead? What would you be doing with your weekends, with your weeknights? Committed action. So I hear, I want to do it, I can't. What's one tiny little step towards this? Tiny little step. I'm going to drink a water before I go out drinking. Something like that. Get it? Any of the 6. Any of the 6. Okay. So, we're going to play this game again, but we're going to play it with the DSM, which I've quoted every single bit. Okay? So, 6 core processes. We're just going to holler some out. Number 1, frantic efforts to avoid real or imagined abandonment is experiential avoidance. So, what process are we going to go with? Just holler it out. Diffusion. What would somebody else use?
Acceptance.
Yep. 2, a pattern of unstable and intense interpersonal relationships. characterized by alternating between extremes of idealization and devaluation. They're the best. They're the amazing. I hate that person. I hate you. You're terrible. What's at play? Fusion. What are we going to go with? Diffusion. Identity disturbance. Markedly and persistently unstable self-image. Lack of self as context, values. Identity, I just read that. Impulsivity in at least 2 areas that are potentially self-damaging. Being present. There's also values. There's committed action. Because there's fusion with that self as content that's just going to go do whatever. 5, recurrent suicidal behavior, gestures or threats, self-mutilating behavior. Contact with the present moment, diffusion. This person is avoiding something through their suicidal behavior, through their self-mutilating, so there's also an opportunity to start practicing acceptance with what it is they're trying to avoid. Affective instability, same thing, feelings all over the place. What are we going to focus on? Acceptance, contact with the present moment, diffusion with those thoughts or those feelings that are so intense. Chronic feelings of emptiness. What are we going to go with there? Values, diffusion, yeah. What might help fill that emptiness? What values are missing? Committed action, yep. Inappropriate, intense anger, difficulty controlling anger. Diffusion, acceptance, contact with the present moment. We can use any of them. It's the beauty. Transient, stress-related, paranoid ideation. They're out to get me. Diffusion. Yep. You guys got it. Contact with the present moment. What's happening right here, right now. All right. OCD and the 6 core processes. So we visited borderline before. We didn't visit OCD. All right. Recurrent and persistent thoughts, urges, or images that are experienced as intrusive and unwanted. So what's happening? What is this process here? Fusion. Yep. And self is content, right? This stuff is me. So what are we going to go with? Diffusion. Self as context. Acceptance. Individual attempts to ignore or suppress such thoughts, urges, or images. That's avoidance, right? Or to neutralize them with some other thought or action. Fusion and avoidance. What are we going to go with? Diffusion. Acceptance. Yep. Just about anything. Take a look at the last ones. I don't have to read them all out loud. Which one would you go with? Your gut is right. Your gut shows you what kind of an ACT therapist you are, what direction you might go. I do a lot of acceptance.
Do you know?
Yeah. Contact with the present moment. This is what's happening. This is what's happening. Yeah. Anything up here that anybody sees where they're like, I don't see how that's avoidance or fusion. It's all avoidance or fusion, folks. It's all avoidance or fusion. That's what ACT teaches. It's so simple. It's so simple. And then you've got 6 basic moves, and none of them are wrong. Okay? Yeah.
Well, I've heard people say, diffusion a lot. It seemed like to me more than other things. And I know you said there's nothing that's wrong, but is there something that you use or that just comes up more as one of those 6 than any other?
Me personally, I use acceptance a lot. I'm somatic based, and so I want to invite people to kind of accept what is happening, contact with the present moment. Those are big ones for me. I probably use self as context the least, which I noticed this week when I was making this PowerPoint and finishing it up. I was like, oh, there's a gap in my ACT services. And so I started playing with it this week, asking people, are you your thoughts? And just really having fun with it. And with some clients where I felt a little stuck, that suddenly opened up a whole new way to work together. So we're all going to have our own tendencies, and then, we can just keep playing as we do as therapists, hopefully playing in places where we might be a little less comfortable, trying something new, keeping it fresh. Yeah.
But you could run committed action through all these.
Pretty much. Committed action definitely needs to be in cahoots with values. It's difficult to move right into, let's do something about the problem. Let's do something. Are we avoiding the acceptance piece? So I don't know that immediately moving with committed action with any of them, but theoretically you could.
It sounds like committed action is almost like strengths, where you're saying you're already doing this, right?
Totally. Yeah, you can identify where they're already committed and where they are taking action as like a resourcing piece, for sure. Yeah, and that I'm wanting to remind us too of the creative hopelessness piece. That's important and something that clinicians usually bring in pretty early. It's this like, what am I going to do? Well, I don't know. Like, what are you going to do? What have you tried? How did that work? What was the cost? I don't know what to do. I mean, it sounds like you've tried all these things. I don't know what you should do. What if we can reframe it? Okay. Any other thoughts, questions, comments on the whole process? We're going to do maybe a little more practice stuff or a little review. Take that as a no. All right. I must be a great teacher. All this silence when I ask for questions. All right. We got 15 minutes left. Let's see if we're going to practice. Okay, we are. So we're going to do that dreaded thing where you break up into pairs and practice a little bit, okay? It can be 3 if one person wants to play observer. But I want to invite you to bring either your issue, if you're feeling like that's okay, or a client issue that maybe you've been struggling with a little bit, and play that client or play that issue, all right? So when you're playing the client, you're going to give the therapist just a few sentences. We're not trying to play like this is real. We're just practicing a little bit, okay? Give the person playing therapist just a few sentences about what it is you're struggling with. Therapist, if you want to ask a question or two, great. And then therapist, you're going to choose one of the 6 interventions, and you're going to try a technique. Then you're going to rewind, and you're going to choose another one, maybe that isn't so readily natural for you, and just try that a little bit. Get some feedback from the client. Client, be easy with your therapist. We're not here to make people feel uncomfortable and like they suck. We're here to be supportive, okay? And then switch roles, and we'll take about 5-7 minutes to do that. Let's review a little quick, or really quick. So just to sum up from the whole day, ACT is about moving forward in valued directions while flexibly attending to present symptoms. It's not about symptom reduction. Sometimes that happens, but that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to help folks be flexibly present. ACT is about workability. How is this working out for you, and what's the cost? Is this adaptive or maladaptive? Okay? We aim to help the client develop psychological flexibility in between experiential avoidance and fusion. There's a flexible middle. Okay? We help them articulate their values, which they often don't even know, and then start taking committed action in those directions. That's it. That's the core. We don't have time to staff a client as a group. Resources, tons of ACT material out there. One of my favorites for getting started is ACT Made Simple by Russ Harris. It's up here if you want to take a look after the workshop. I've got a bunch of others. There's ACT for PTSD, ACT for anxiety. Acceptance and commitment therapy, if you want to understand how the engine works, get the original book by Hayes, Strosahl, and Wilson. I have that up here too. It gets into relational frame theory, which is how fusion even happens in the brain. It's really complex if you're a nerd and like to geek out on that stuff. I do. Russ Harris has a website that's up there. Tons of free resources on his website. He also has some pretty cool YouTube videos, and he's got a really charming Australian accent as well. Then at the bottom here is contextualscience.org. That's the ACT Association. They have forums, they have information, they have seminars, all kinds of stuff. And they have like low cost, pay what you can to participate membership fees. So really great, lots of resources. And if you like, if you reach out to me, I'm happy to share these slides with you so you can take a look. I don't do printouts just because I feel like it wastes paper, and if you want to remember something, take committed action, write it down. So this is me, that's my website, my email, my phone number. Feel free to reach out with any questions. Along the way, I always, not always, last time I remembered, but I almost always forget my cards. So please just write that down if you want to contact me.